Hey everybody, welcome to Lore Friday. I'm DM Gallibond, and today on Lore Friday, we conclude looking at the adventures in Chapter 4 from the Out of the Abyss campaign, which was published in September of 2015. In this particular video, we're going to focus on the Hold of the Deepking, which serves as the palace of His Majesty, Deepking Horgar Steelshadow V. Now, the theme of this particular adventure is to have an audience with the monarch of Gracklstugh. The setting of this adventure is the royal palace in the Duergar city of Gracklstugh, which is located on the shore of the Dark Lake. And the hook for this one is after performing a service for the Stone Speaker, which is the leader of the Stone Giants, the Keepers of the Flame, or the Stone Guard, the PCs may be invited to have an audience before King Horgar Steelshadow V himself. Now, in terms of summary of this adventure, this particular adventure could be a turning point in the campaign for the PCs, or it might result in doom for everyone. And that depends on a few tosses of dice and the decisions that the players make. Now, the Hold of the Deepking is sandwiched between Ledugar's Furrow to the north and Themberchaud's Lair to the south. The palace is a great huge building of polished basalt which is lit up by great pools of molten lava that give the palace something of a hellish glow. And atop the great black stone walls are iron turrets and battlements, all of which appear to be empty. Now, of course, the palace is not unguarded. Remember that all Duergar have that trick where they can go invisible. And the 50 guards standing in the courtyard before the gates of the palace, as well as the 50 guards manning the battlements and the towers on the walls, are all invisible. You can see them all there, right? Yeah, sure. Yeah, there they are. What do you mean you can't see them? God, you guys, you need better vision. You can't see invisible creatures? What's wrong with you? And the additional 100 guards inside the palace that act as the honor guard for the king, they're all invisible as well. The guards are under orders to attack anyone that approaches the palace without authorization, and that means that if the party come without the proper escort, the Stone Speaker, the leader of the Stone Guard, or the leader of the Keepers of the Flame, for instance, then the guards will attack first, and they'll ask questions later. If the PCs are led into the Great Hall of the Palace for an audience, they are met by more impressive dwarven architecture. The hall's high walls feature channels where molten lava pours continuously, making the heat in the chamber intense. And at the far end of the hall, the king sits in an enormous obsidian throne, and he's clad all in polished and gleaming metal, and he has an ornate crown on top of his head. And next to the king is his consort, who wears an elegant gown that is made entirely out of gold coins. Now this, dear DM, is where life gets fun for you. You see, Deepking Horgar Steelshadow V has been exposed to the madness of the demon lords for too long, and he has a random effect of indefinite madness. The adventure invites you to randomly roll for one indefinite madness effect in the Dungeon Master's Guide. So, the king might be paranoid. He might be a kleptomaniac. He might have a lust to spill the blood of anyone he thinks has crossed him. Or he might be obsessed with an imaginary friend that only he can see. And who... What's that? Yeah, I like that idea too. Yeah. Honored guests, don't you think the idea that my special friend has offered is a good one? Come, tell me what you think of it. Come on, speak up. I know you heard my friend. I gave you a royal command. I said, speak up. What do you think of my friend's suggestion? Guards, take these ingrates to the dungeons and let them think about their insolence before the king. You see, that's the kind of fun that you might have with some sort of strange indefinite madness that you allow the king to have. You can roll on the table in a DMG for one of those indefinite madness effects, or depending on just what strikes your fancy, you might pick one and run with that, or just invent a madness effect of your own if you don't see one in there that you like. So the other thing the players may never discover, depending on how their interaction with the king goes, is that his consort is not what she seems to be. In fact, the consort may be one of the most dangerous people in all of Gracklstugh. So another thing that might surprise the PCs is that the audience chamber seems empty, except for themselves, the king, and the consort. Of course, if they could see invisible creatures, they would see the 100-strong honor guard in the chamber with them. They also may detect, or they might never realize, that the king has a wall of force erected between the throne and where any supplicants or visitors like the PCs stand during the audience. The most common enemies in this particular adventure are, of course, the Duergar Stone Guard soldiers, and they are all CR2. And remember, there's 200 of them in total to deal with. And that brings us to our toughest potential encounter. The only encounter, in fact, that the PCs are likely to have is if something goes horribly wrong, or if they do something to provoke the king. And of course, King with his madness, they may be perfectly innocent and still manage to provoke the king. And that's kind of where you as the DM have to figure out what would really set off the king. It would be really unfair probably to punish the PCs just for trying to make nice because the king has madness. So if you're going to do that, figure out how that's going to play out before that happens, because it would kind of be very unfair to your players if, oh, well, Madness Table says this, so yeah, he just has one of them executed because he thinks it's a fun thing to do. That would be very unfair. Other than that situation, they're probably not going to have an encounter. But if they do have an encounter, they're going to have to deal with the force of 200 Duergar Stone Guard soldiers that are inside and outside the palace. For a party of level 5 PCs, it doesn't really seem like there's any way that would end well for them. Special creatures or items in here. The Deepking has some very nice magic items that the PCs would never be able to get their hands on unless something very strange indeed happens. And he's not going to give those away as gifts, nor would any party be able to take them from him by force, considering the sheer number of guards surrounding the king. And the consort is a servant of one of the demon lords who's loose in the Underdark, and the consort is present to ensure that the Deep King doesn't ever lose his madness, because that plays right into the hands of the demon lords themselves. And of course, she's also in disguise, and unless anyone in the party has the ability to see the true form of a creature that has some innate shape-changing abilities, then it's really unlikely that the PCs would ever know that she's anything other than what she appears. My favorite element of the adventure is a monarch, president, prime minister, whatever, a leader that has a disability, such as a madness, that is being kept in this state by someone his loyal subjects would never ever suspect. Thinking about the position, the consort of a king, She's treated with respect by everyone around her, but she's seen in the eyes of everyone as little more than the king's personal property. I mean, at the end of the day, it's kind of the consort is just there to make the king happy, right? I mean, so it's a perfect place for an outside force bent on corrupting a kingdom to whisper dark and devious things into the ear of a powerful monarch. So how much fun could you have with a ruler like that in your own homebrew setting? Think of a city. Maybe a city you haven't fleshed out all that much, but someplace that you might want to send your PCs. Maybe there's something off with that ruler. And maybe it's subtle, so that the people there haven't quite figured it out. But somebody coming from the outside, oh, they would notice that there's enough weirdness here to think something might be wrong. And how much fun would it be if the entity that is behind this corruption of the throne is actually using the consort as sort of a spy or a conduit or a mole, if you will, through which to perpetuate and provide this information that is leading this monarch to do whatever nefarious things this outside force wants him to do. The first historical character that comes to mind when I read this chapter was Rasputin. And Rasputin's the mad monk advisor to the last Tsar of Russia before the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917 that saw the royal family murdered in a coup. Now, even over 100 years later, so many rumors of evil and scheming plots that Rasputin have really kind of led to its own sort of level of folklore. And Rasputin has a name that comes down to us for anybody that's an untrustworthy advisor, or an advisor that is bad for the leader. The easiest homebrew adaptation for this can be really any palace in any homebrew setting. Because if you think about it, with just a bit of a change of color and possibly a change of construction, this palace, the monarch and the consort, can be put in the heart of any city in your campaign. Change it to a wooden palace, it can be right at home in an elven city. Change it to granite, it can be a human or a dwarven city on the surface. Change it to a large hill, it could be a halfling city. Whatever. So you could put this in any kind of situation and just sort of have whatever plot you want to spin out of it be tied up in this corruption that is targeting this particular monarch. And you can easily use this with other editions of the game because Durgar have been around since the early editions. So that means it's perfectly at home anywhere you want to use it. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this particular video and also for our set of videos looking at the city of Gracklstugh from Out of the Abyss. If you've been watching this far, really appreciate it. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, and click that post notification bell. And next time when we come back, we're going to be taking a look at the Neverlight Grove. All right, everyone. Take care. Talk to you later. Good night, everybody.